If you look at this landscape, you might find this is a natural landscape, the trees, the stream and the meadows. But if you take a closer look, you might find this landscape is a historical landscape, a man-made landscape, a living landscape indeed, that has changed and developed over the centuries. If you look at this watermill, it dates back to the 14th century, and this landscape is even older. So if you take a look at this nature, you might find there's this historical and this cultural dimension to it. So it's formed by man. For a long time, we tended to think this place interesting because of its historical watermill only, because of the monument. But especially in the past 2 decades, there is a growing interest in the history of the landscape as a whole. People like to live in an attractive and meaningful landscape. It provides a sense of place. But there is another reason to take the historical landscape into account. Understanding the historical nature of our cultural landscapes can help us to find solutions for actual challenges. We are faced with climate change. That means heavy rains, inundations during winter, and at the same time, severe dry periods during summer. That raises the question, how can historical landscapes, understanding the logic of these historical landscapes, help us to solve these problems? And what kind of information do we need to understand these historical landscapes? In the Netherlands, we are trying to find answers to those questions. The new approach of historical landscapes as living required new methods and products to analyze and describe heritage and historical landscapes. How can we describe historical landscapes not as static artifacts, but as continuously developing landscapes? How do we invite water professionals and other planners to use this historical knowledge in an appealing and applicable way? What kind of knowledge do they need? And how do we engage local communities? If you consider landscapes as living and developing entities, it is a logical step to characterize and describe landscapes by writing their biography, like you do for people. In the past 2 decades, there has been a growing number of landscape and waterscape biographies in the Netherlands and in other countries, in all shapes and sizes, including a diverse range of themes, scales, and methodologies. Despite this variety, many biographies have common elements. They focus on interaction between soil and water system, ecology, and human land use. They use scientific knowledge from different disciplines like historical ecology, architecture, and art. And they use both scientific and local knowledge. And they present a long-term perspective, change as a constant factor. And they don't consider landscapes as anonymous artifacts, but they recognize authorship. They look at landscapes as being created, as being a reflection of ideas and ideals. And they focus on landscape and spatial characteristics rather than on valuation. The landscape biography indeed has become a well-known and often used instrument in spatial planning and policy development in the Netherlands. For instance, for the new national parks, or for important national projects like the redevelopment of the IJsselmeer region, the central lake in the heart of the Netherlands. Planners argue that a landscape biography provides a solid common starting point, a shared vision on the emergence and the characteristics of a region, and that a landscape biography can help to bridge different interests. Only 10 years ago, this watermill was seen as an obstacle, as an isolated monument, as an obstacle in modern water management and nature conservation. Nowadays, this watermill is seen as an integral part of the watermill landscape that can accommodate solutions for challenges on climate change. It's not an obstacle, but it's a chance. In the coming years, a coalition of water boards, regional governments and millers works together to recreate this historical watermill landscape in order to react to challenges on climate change. During this year's extremely dry summer, the damming of water at the watermill has proved to preserve a lot of water. And during high peak rains in the winter season, these areas will be used as controlled inundation plains to prevent cities from being flooded. The watermill landscape will be one of the pilot projects that will be carried out in the next years. If you look at landscapes in this biographical way as a living and developing entity, you will find that understanding the historical development and functioning of a landscape can help you to solve actual challenges. And the landscape biography helps you to understand the landscape.